Welcome back to another episode of Network One-on-One, where I sit down two people who, in this case, have not met each other before. Today's episode features Chris Ryan of Chris Ryan Video and Rachel Arbuckle of 2000 Paces. What I think you're going to see in this episode is some really good networking because they're even brainstorming about how they can work together in the future. Really good episode, Network One-on-One. Sit back, relax, enjoy it. Let us know what you think about it. Like, subscribe, comment, do all the great things that we need you to do in these podcasts to raise up the algorithm and have some fun with it. Network One-on-One.
Hey. All right.
Good to meet you.
You too.
All right. So I'll read the first one, I guess.
Great.
You read the second one.
Sounds great.
So introductions. Let's do our name, occupation, name of business. So my name is Chris Ryan. My occupation is a video storyteller, which is kind of a little vague, but maybe we'll get into more detail.
Okay.
The name of the business is Chris Ryan Video, strangely enough.
Yeah.
And years in your field. I've been doing video exclusively for my own companies as an entrepreneur for about 6 years, but I've been dabbling in media for my whole career and working in video for at least 25 years.
Wow. Fantastic. But the company itself started, the company that you have now that you've created, how long
Ryan
ago?
Video, actually, This is the first year with this company.
Okay.
I sold my prior company earlier last year.
How exciting.
Yeah.
How exciting.
Yeah.
I am Rachel Arbuckle, and I am an owner of 2000 Paces Photo Organizing. So we provide photo organizing solutions, everything from organizing and digitizing print photos, slides, negatives, organizing digital assets, keywords, facial recognition, and then we create everything, put it all together, get it organized, put it on a site with the goal of really preserving and organizing a collection.
Awesome.
So we've had our brick and mortar office, if you will, since 2018. I started in my home a few years prior to that, right? Like many businesses. But I'd say I've been in the field for almost ever because really the field involves being passionate about memories and preserving them. And it's something I've always, it's always been really near and dear to my heart. So,
Yeah. Awesome. All right.
All right. So question 2, would you say that you preserve memories for a living? It's a great question.
Yeah, I definitely do.
Yeah.
People pay me to do that.
Yeah. You can
So
talk more
that's
about
a part of
that?
my business model.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, Chris Ryan Video, we help organizations and individuals tell their story. And that could be, for example, Kids for Peace is a nonprofit. They recently kicked off their big global Kindness Matters, Kindness Challenge thing. So I created a video for them, and it was all about kids doing good deeds of kindness on a checklist. And it's a challenge that's happening with millions, literally, of school kids around the world. So that's their story. But then I also do video for people that just want to capture their own personal oral history. For example, a mom that is unfortunately has a brain tumor, and it may be terminal cancer. We don't know, but she has a 4-year-old boy, and she wants to preserve memories for him.
Wow.
And so we recorded about 6 hours of video, and I put together a whole library of video content for he and his dad and hopefully the mom to all enjoy for years to come.
Wow.
So
that's
definitely
really preserving memories.
Yeah.
I mean, in video, and then is that, so you record, you do interviews. Are these interviews that you kind of plan ahead, or do you invite them to kind of just talk about their memories and then from there you edit it? I'm really curious to hear what that evolution is.
So it's yes and yes. I do help prompt them. Sometimes I'll bring themes, or at one time for a gentleman, I had him pick out like fortune cookies out of a paper bag. It's like, tell me about your father. Put it back.
I love
and then
that.
he just tells the story. So we can make it fun, like a game,
Sure.
or we can make it thematic. But I try to stay out of the production. I just try to facilitate and energize the what's coming from the person on camera.
That's incredible. And then you go back and edit the parts that are, where they're not just going on and on about the same
we make
story.
it nice and tidy. We clean it up, put music behind it, so it's got some emotional connection for the viewer.
That's incredible. Do you ever put sort of is it always video? Do you ever put photo montage as they're speaking about, I flew a certain plane in World War II kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
That's great.
Anything to illustrate the story.
That's very cool. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
That's really, do you have that, is the legacy videos, if you will, versus some of the other productions for nonprofits or corporations, do you find that your business is focused on one more than another?
The legacy videos or the oral history type things don't come along as often. I love them, and they're usually longer lead time, longer production time, a larger paycheck.
Yeah.
So I don't do as many of them, and it's good that way.
Okay.
That's
great.
And then the other ones fill in between.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, I certainly have quite a few clients that I'm certain would benefit from something like that, because it's great to preserve your photos. And I think that's really important. To be able to hear the story and see this people talking about it is really powerful.
Well, so how do you preserve those stories?
Yeah. So we're preserving memories every day. I mean, that's one of the biggest parts of what we do, is to take the story that is in photos. There were, for many years, we didn't have video, right? I mean, when my parents were very young, they didn't have video as a regular thing, and certainly their grandparents didn't have it, and so on in previous generations. And we don't always have the ability to capture those memories in that way. So capturing them on photos, oftentimes when you talk about your client that had, the brain tumor, we have clients that come in, and I get chills every time I talk about it, quite honestly, that come in and they have a parent or a sibling or somebody that's very close, spouse that's terminally ill, or they've lost somebody. And unfortunately, it makes me very sad when they come to us after they've lost somebody, because I want to help them capture that story, right? Like you're doing, get the stories behind the photos.
Yeah.
So by digitizing all these print photos and slides and taking the digital photos off CDs and computers and floppy disks, believe it or not, those are sitting in storage and online, we're preserving those memories, we're backing them up, we're making them accessible. And so there's something really powerful. And we had a client that came in last week, and she hadn't seen her photos in a very long time, which often happens, right? Because we've got them in photo albums and boxes in attics and closets.
Right.
And it was this dog that was her first favorite special dog when she was growing up. And we found a photo of this dog, and she didn't think she had it. It was her as a child. And it was just, she brightened up, and the whole room brightened up. And it was just this powerful moment and this connection to go, I miss that. And then it brings up those memories. So it's a lot of fun.
I wish I could have gotten that on video.
Yeah. Gotten which?
Seeing her reaction, seeing that picture, and seeing it, like all the things firing in her brain.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. So we move on.
Yes, of course.
This is fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
All right. Where do you find inspiration when creating, Rachel?
Wow. It's interesting how these questions really, they just kind of flow into each other, because the reality is my inspiration, it's multifaceted, but when I'm talking about our clients and the stories and how we're able to reconnect them with those memories, to me, that's inspiration. To know when we have clients, we had a client whose mom passed away, and she was looking at these photos, and she said, gosh, I remember now that every summer, my mom, who was a single mom, would take us on a camping trip around, it was like a month-long camping trip, and she had all these photos, and she had no idea she had them. We have another client who, her father is currently terminally ill. And it was so important to her to not only preserve these memories, but give him the opportunity to share the stories behind them. And they were all so grateful. But I was honored that we could be a part of them preserving that story, and we still chat. And so the idea that we continue to work with clients for years, they come back because there's a wedding or a special celebration. It inspires me all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you?
I think we're very similar. I'm inspired by the reaction of people to their own ability to, capture their memories and reconnect with things that they didn't think of for years. So the reaction from clients or individuals to the work that I put together for them, that's the inspiration for me. I'm inspired by, making a connection with them and opening up their heart to something and seeing it happen, watching their face light up. That's the best. I love that you are capturing, literally, you're capturing that moment when you ask them a question, and I imagine you're kind of prompting them, digging a little bit deeper and trying to, and then it just is like this light bulb above their head, and they go, oh my gosh, I remember when. Yeah.
And exciting.
Right.
Exciting.
It's interesting with the photos because what you're doing is so needed because so many people, they hand down the photo albums, right? And a lot of times there's no written anything. It's not a real storybook or even a scrapbook.
Yeah.
And I remember getting a box from my grandfather's, he passed away. And so I asked for the photos. And so what they did was they ripped them all out of the book and they sent half of them to me and half of them to my brother to be fair.
Yeah.
So now I've got this box and I have no clue chronologically who is, where things came from. And now he's not here to tell me those stories.
Your grandfather, sure.
So the key now that we have video and it's so readily available. I mean, look, it's
everywhere. It's all around.
It's not like you have to have $1 million to have a studio. You can have an iPhone and you can create something. Although I do mine on better cameers than that.
Right.
But the point
Good
is,
to know you don't use an iPhone, Chris.
to capture and put context around those memories.
Absolutely.
It's never been easier.
No, absolutely. And I love that. And I love your story because it's unfortunately so common. I was just on the phone today with somebody who was interested in, hiring us to help them with their photos. And the idea was, well, my mom had, this bag of photos that was going to go to this sibling and this bag was going to go to another sibling. And the reality is there's very few photos that our parents have taken of us or our grandparents or whomever where you're the only person in the photo, right?
Yeah.
And they're all pieces of the puzzle. I always say they're pieces of that puzzle, and you can kind of get an idea what the picture is, but if there's too many pieces missing, that makes it really difficult. And so to be able to get those, you said it was your brother that has the other half, right? And put that story together. Unfortunately, your grandfather isn't able to tell you the stories, but putting those pieces together, it really does. It tells a story. And you talking about the story would be really interesting too.
Yeah.
You have to video yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
How rewarding is it, Chris, when you've brought a customer's vision and story to life?
Well, that is better than the paycheck. I don't do it for money. It is so rewarding to see somebody, like when I first sent these videos to this mom, she saw them over the holidays. I wanted it to be a Christmas present. Wow. And so, she couldn't get through the first episode because she was crying, and having a brain tumor, she didn't remember some of what we had recorded 6 months earlier because it was a long time in production. So she was really proud of how well she did, and that now this is something that her son will always have.
Yeah.
So seeing that reaction and getting that emotional gratification that you've just added to somebody's life and maybe their heirs, and having,
of course,
leaving my fingerprint on people's lives is a good feeling. How about you? Yeah,
well, and it's interesting when you say that because, it would be really cool if I could hear my great-grandparents talking, if I could see them on video, or my parents when they were even younger, to see what was their story. That is so powerful. And the fact that she, unfortunately, because of the brain tumor, hadn't remembered, necessarily seen that. What an incredible experience for her. That's remarkable.
Hi, I'm Rachel Beld, host of Velocity, the Vista Chamber podcast. Join me as I sit down with Vista's movers, shakers, and changemakers. Let's move Vista forward with Velocity.
This podcast is brought to you by yourinsurancekplace.com. Owning a business is hard work. You put your blood, sweat, and tears into it every single day. You need a partner who understands the ins and outs of insuring small to medium-sized businesses. For over 40 years, our California Property and Casualty Insurance Agency has insured businesses just like yours. We've seen it all, and we've learned a thing or two about what it takes to keep your business protected. That's why we offer free policy assessments. We'll take a look at your policy and let you know if there are any gaps in your coverage. Let us help you to protect what you've worked so hard to build. yourinsurancekplace.com. The Film Hub is the future of co-working in downtown Vista. Get energized in an inspiring work environment that is built for your success. With multiple membership options for workspace and private offices, you can become a part of our co-working community. The Film Hub makes it easier to produce the professional content your business needs. From video production, live streams, photo shoots, or in-person events, you can create all this and more in our audio and video facilities. Love your work and where you accomplish it. The Film Hub.
When a client comes in to our office, or we work with clients all over the country, actually. So we have clients that bring items in, drive them to us, or they ship it to us, or I actually travel around the country and help them in their home. But regardless, let's just say we've got a client that comes in and they come in with this anxiety and guilt and stress of, I've got boxes of albums, boxes of photos, slides, videos that I haven't seen in years, right?
It's like April 15th and you're taking your taxes.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. Make sense of this, will you?
You know, that's, Chris, I love that. It's kind of like you haven't done your taxes in decades and then you come to me.
I'm shamed.
Exactly. And there is this, you know, as parents, we often have guilt that we're not doing right, or as we experience some guilt with our own parents, right? That maybe we're not doing enough to help them, and people have passed things down. So when a client comes in with what they consider to be this chaos and they're feeling overwhelmed and they're worried that something's going to happen with a natural disaster, or there's a graduation coming up or something and they can't find any photos, to be able to provide them peace of mind to say, we're experts, we know what we're doing, we have a process, we have a team of people that we've trained, and we're gonna I want to hear what your goals are, and then we're gonna make them happen. And then we update them on a weekly basis, and they start to feel a little more comfortable. And then we do what we call the big reveal, where we say, okay, this is what we did. Here's some photos of what your photos look like before. And now look, now they're in these beautiful archive boxes, or they're on this online photo site. And I always see it's sort of that weight lifted, right? You hear that deep sigh of relief.
Or
like,
that
okay.
Excitement of glee.
Yes.
So exciting to see these. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do you touch up the photos? Do you do anything to enhance them, or,
Yeah, that's a great question. We can do that, and we do that. We don't do it necessarily with every photo because we've got people who come in with hundreds and thousands of photos. Yes. So it just depends on their goal. But we've had I remember we had someone who, and I don't actually know the story of why she had no childhood photos, but she had one 8x10 photo of her at about 2 or 3 years old. It was a black and white photo. I think it was from the 50s. And it was the only photo that she had of herself as a child. And her kids decided to take a Sharpie marker and draw a big circle right in the middle of her head. They just drew all over it. And for years, that was just that was really hard for her. She thought, well, this is my only childhood photo. And she brought it to us and we digitized it and we restored it, right? And then you have people that have mold and stuff, unfortunately, on their photo. You've seen that, right? Sure. And so, that's fun when we can bring that to life too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. All right. Is it ever difficult, Rachel, to bring some customers along into the digital world? Do you have people who are a little skeptical?
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I love that question because we're living in this world where digital is literally everywhere, particularly around us right now. But I think sometimes we take for granted that everybody appreciates it. Mm-hmm. But the reality is there are a number of people in this world that didn't grow up with the same technology or haven't embraced it. And so when we are working with clients, they're taking these photo albums, sometimes dozens of photo albums mm-hmm. that they have meticulously collected and created. But these photo albums are in boxes because, of course, they're taking up far too much room. And so sometimes it's really difficult, or it's a challenge, I should say, to explain to somebody, we need to take these photos out of the albums because the chemicals are, deteriorating the photos. Right. And that's the best way for us to digitize them. And now I'm going to take your photos from these beautiful albums that you spent years creating, mm-hmm. and we're going to put them on this online site. And now you're going to click, click, click to find your photo.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
But the anxiety even for them around that and embracing that digital component of it is difficult, right? So one of the ways that we've helped is to first of all explain that it would be wonderful if we could keep all your photos in these albums or scrapbooks. And sometimes we can. We have a camera scan, so we can scan large items. Mm-hmm. But typically, it's in the best interest of the photos, the memories, the collection, to take them out and digitize them. And so when we start talking about the fact that what we're trying to accomplish is that your photos are preserved so that you can pass that legacy on to, your kids and your grandkids mm-hmm. and future generations. Yeah. That's where what the meaning is hits home. And then because we create an online site for each client, typically, for most clients, mm-hmm. We actually provide a training where we sit down or on a Zoom if they're remote and walk them through. And we always allow ourselves, make ourselves available as a resource. Yeah. But that's, I think, where we,
what's
that challenge.
The cool pitch that we can both use, probably.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Like, if you were to question, do a survey, and most people, I bet, if they, you get the question of, okay, your house is burning down, what are you going to grab? 5 minutes. My pets, my kids, not in that order.
Right.
Maybe some jewelry, photo albums. That's usually probably in the 5.
Oh, 1,000%.
And then people who do suffer a disaster, what do they talk about having lost? They talk about their photo mm-hmm. albums. Hopefully they don't talk about their kids or their pets.
Right, of course.
But the digital sale of that is, it's no longer necessary to go back into a burning house because we're going to have it saved, easy to share around the world in a heartbeat. Yeah. And it'll never deteriorate. You don't have to worry about grabbing it.
No, I mean, it's, if I could piggyback on that comment, because I love that it's the reason, it is the reason that I started the company. And, we live here in San Diego, and we know that fires, and we were talking about, earthquakes, unfortunately, and now mudslides apparently and flooding is becoming more commonplace. And we were very abruptly evacuated from a fire. Typically in San Diego, you kind of have, it's moving, and then you find out and you start gathering your things, like you're talking about. You gather, of course, the kids and the pets, and then and the photos and all those kind of things. But our neighbor knocked on the door and said, "There's a fire," and then she ran into her home. I mean, we literally had minutes. Yeah. And that was terrifying to me, not only because there was a fire right near me and we live in a gated community we were trying to get out of, but the idea when I was standing at the bottom of the hill looking up at our home for days, the idea that our photo, and of course, I'm the memory keeper in my family. Everybody, I believe, has a memory keeper, somebody that really is passionate and who keeps all the photos. So I had photos of ancestors and scrapbooks and photos from like the 1700s and journals and then my own stuff and computers and CDs. And, it was that anxiety and stuff that I wanted to avoid. Mm-hmm. And that's really what prompted me to look into preserving my own photos. Yeah. And I realized there aren't a lot of people out there doing this and not doing it to the level that I thought was necessary to future-proof your photos. Mm-hmm. So, and even the videos you're creating and stuff, I mean, those stories, to know that you can access them. It's the same concept of preserving those stories in a different way, but to have them accessible somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So that they don't just have it on a DVD or a thumb drive or, so.
Yeah, there's a really good podcast out. Anderson Cooper has a podcast, and, you know, he's gone through a lot of grief, losing a brother, losing a father at an early age, losing his mother, Gloria Vanderbilt, last year.
Right.
So he's now going through years and years of boxes and knows nothing. When he opens a box, he doesn't know what's going to jump out, you know?
Right.
But the podcast is really good, but, you know, he talks about finding tape recordings of her voice and how, just what you said earlier, the recording of the personality, the animated person, you know, the photograph is one thing, and that's a beautiful thing.
Sure, of
but
course.
to have a person looking at that person saying, look at this photo.
Yeah.
I want to tell you the story behind that. So then you get the spark of life to kind of give it some more, you know, color and context. So, I think we definitely should have coffee.
No doubt about it. We're definitely going to have coffee.
Talk about this some more.
Well, I mean, because the reality is, how exciting would it be? You know, I've thought about, you know, I talked about my own dad who had a kidney transplant. Actually, I gave him a kidney, but that's a whole nother story just a few years ago. And he, you know, he's getting older, and that's difficult. And I want to hear these stories from both my parents. And so, of course, I've preserved all of their photos, obviously, with my company, and they're all preserved and protected. And we've talked about them, and I can document things. And there's something powerful in that. But the idea that we could take those photos, and for your clients as well, and take those photos and then say, talk to me about this. What does this mean? What were you thinking here?
About that trip to Disneyland. Why did I have a frown on my face?
Right.
Oh, man, that day was crazy.
Right.
Before that picture was taken, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much magic that's up in the human brain that isn't caught in that little still frame.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, I always think our brains are like a mental Rolodex. And, you know, we're constantly, I always think that as we get older, we take longer to remember things. And my kids will say, you know, oh, Mom, you're old. But I think it's just because we have so much in there, right? And we have to kind of go through that mental, they don't even know what a Rolodex is, right? I'm aging myself now.
That's a perfect lead into the next question. How do you find clientele? How do you fill your Rolodex? How do you find some new, you know, where do your clients come from?
Yeah. You know, so we're still kind of, I like to say we're in sort of the toddler phase of our business, right? We passed the infancy stage, and so we're kind of exploring different avenues. And so we do a lot of the typical stuff, right? We have a social media presence, you know, making ourselves available for these incredible opportunities to chat about what we do. Networking, I'm realizing clearly from this conversation, is an incredible way. But I will say that it's been challenging for us, for me as a business owner, because this industry, and very similar, quite honestly, to what you do, particularly with the legacy videos, this industry is not, it's still very young. There are so many people that call us and they say, I had no idea that you existed. I did not know for years that there was a service like this out there, which is why I started the business, because it really didn't exist, again, to the level that I wanted to provide. And so I think, you know, there's sort of acquiring clients and bringing people in, but it's interesting because we're trying to communicate that we even exist, right? I mean, if I owned a hair salon, people know I need to get my hair done, right? And you could look up salons, and then you start looking at reviews and figuring that stuff out. But if you don't know that you need to look for somebody that provides photo organizing services, or that can convert your home movies and your old VHS tapes, you can see them and that kind of thing, you don't look for it. Right now, I really want to try and focus on letting people know that this kind of service exists, and explaining, sort of educating the public on the fact that it's important, which I think people get, but and letting them know we're here. Have you experienced anything like that as well?
Same thing.
Okay.
I mean, for me to, when I launched my business, I came out of corporate America, marketing, advertising agencies, started my video business, and my first objective was just awareness, to go to as many chamber functions as I could and network and try to find the people who would be advocates or influencers for what I do. Just like you, not everybody knows a videographer. You know, everybody's got an automotive mechanic and a dry cleaner, and you need somebody to cut your hair. I've got this person.
Yes.
But if it's like, do you know anybody that does video?
Right.
That's not normally something that comes right out of your, top of your head.
Right.
So it was kind of novel for you. I imagine it would be the same, that you're a little bit of a unicorn in the business world, but it's a cool thing. And people say, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
They like your job. It's memorable. And you're not in a really crowded space like, real estate or insurance or some of these other, which they're all very important.
Yeah.
But so networking and the value of leveraging your relationships beyond just a handshake and a business card exchange, which I just think is a missed opportunity. It's like, less networking, but more quality. Find the people that will open doors for you or that can be your friend.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
What a novel concept,
yeah,
right?
I want the whole fellowship of networking to nurture me as well as just the business part.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I need to do more chamber events and networking. And I love, I know we've got our next question, but I love that we were brought together.
Yeah.
And because it just makes sense. It's being able to sit down and have those conversations really about what you do and kind of being authentic in what you do. I mean, I think one thing that is resonating, if I may say so, from you is that you're very passionate about what you're doing. Clearly, you've got experience in it, based on your years of experience, and we can all talk the technical talk, but I think that when you can really show that authentic, genuine passion for what you do, it shines through. So I really feel that with you. And I think for myself, I'm far more inclined to work with somebody that aligns with that vision like you are. So I appreciate that.
So that is the key to good networking, I think, is not just showing up, but also kind of being smart about the people that you can make magic with.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So your turn.
Yeah. Is there a way that we can be of assistance to each other?
Oh,
I know we've already been. Nah, this isn't going to work out. Yeah, I mean, you want to? We've kind of been talking about it, but let's hear what your thoughts are.
Certainly, the people who would call me or reach out because they want to preserve memories, or maybe they've got a major event coming up, like a graduation or retirement.
Yeah.
Well, that's a moment in time that should be preserved one way or another. There's going to be photographers hired. What do you do with those photos?
Yeah.
There's a videographer there. I don't really want to do weddings, but those critical moments in life, milestones.
Okay.
Those are the times when people tend to pull out the camera, and that's where you come in, and that's where, I could see us easily referring back and forth the people that I talk to about video.
Yeah.
Oh, look at all these photos. Have you ever thought about putting them together and really telling a story? Now, so this is a little bit off track, but when it comes, like some people, scrapbooking was a really big thing. I don't know if it still is.
It is for certain groups of people.
How do you differentiate yourself from someone who thinks, oh, I get that, that's just scrapbooking?
To think that what we do is scrapbooking?
Right. Like, how do you differentiate yourself from a person who may not really get it at the first snap?
It's funny because I remember when I first started the company, even some of my, friends, when I was trying to explain to them what I was doing, and they'd say, oh, you're making albums. You're putting albums together. You're putting scrapbooks together. And, it's not to say we actually do create photo books. They're with digital photos, and we create these beautiful leather coffee table books. But the reality is, I think the best way to really, really talk about it is that when you want to create a scrapbook or a photo book or a photo slideshow or a video, that's based on stories that have happened, whether they are stories that you can talk about, like you share, or stories that are in photos, or stories that are on home movies. And so I think the difference is that before you can create the photo album or, the photo slideshow or the online site, we need to get your entire collection together. We need to remove the duplicates and remove the stuff that doesn't tell your story and focus on the ones that do. Preserve them in a way that will allow you to then create that story. Yeah. And so when we talk about how I can see, for me personally, how I can see the two of us working together is the idea that as you're working with somebody that is sharing their story, when they're talking about that plane they flew in World War II, or they're talking about that camping trip that they always went to in Tahoe with their family or whatever it is, let's go back and find those photos. But that's the challenge, right?
Yeah, right.
How do you find a few photos out of tens or hundreds of thousands, even on our phone, right? So it's hard enough to go into a photo album and flip through it and find a photo. But beyond that, good luck if your photos aren't organized right, finding that one photo.
Yeah.
And so the idea that that as people are ready to tell these stories, that we could go and say, okay, well, I've got somebody that I can work with, Rachel Arbuckle at 2000 Paces, who, while I'm working on the video, is going to take your collection, and maybe that'll spark some more stories, right? And that's an opportunity for you to sort of, okay, now let's talk about this more, or let's bring grandma in to talk about what's going on. Yeah. I know for myself, when we take an entire collection and convert it, rather organize it and preserve it, clean it up. First of all, people say, I have so much. It's too much. And when is it going to stop? And I always say, you don't want it to stop, because when you start making memories, right? What does that mean?
Yeah.
That means we're not here to make memories. And so I think it's wonderful. So people are constantly making more memories, which means they're adding to their story, right? But when you get that foundation of, okay, now I can capture everything from my childhood and my parents' childhood and everything, and now I can pass that on to you. I have so many clients that have these amazing, incredible stories where they've moved around the world, or even if they stayed in one place, their childhood friends. And there's one client that I have who, for I think it's 40 years now, every single month, and maybe it's 30 years, but every month she and this group of women have gotten together every month for a luncheon or something. I mean,
I'm jealous.
I know. And it's the same group of friends, and we were able to take all these photos. Now you can talk about that story, right? And so to be able to pass that on, now we've preserved the memories in photos. Now you have recall of what those memories are, and being able to hand that off to you so that they can share it in another meaningful way, I think is really cool.
Well, one thing I think we might want to talk about is after the video that I do, it's only viewable. It's not in any kind of readable form.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if we might talk about a collaboration where, it's very easy to transfer the spoken word into printed text.
Or like a transcript.
You get a transcript, and then that transcript could help inform the organization of the photos or the website. On the website, you could have snippets of audio where the person is actually talking about the photo, not just reading it.
Yes.
So there's some ways we may be able to enhance what I can think of ways you can enhance what I'm doing.
Yeah. And vice versa. We do have clients sometimes that say, I need to tell the story for this. And it's great. Some people want to write up the story. You know where I thought you were going, although I love your idea. And we do on the online sites, we can find a way to capture the audio and have that story and kind of connect them. We rename all our files with meaningful file names. And so to be able to say, hanging out in Tahoe with the cousins, and then hanging out in Tahoe with the cousins audio, right? So you've got this component where it's easy to find, because what's the point in preserving your memories if you can't find or share any of them? Yeah. But when you were talking about taking that transcript, I was thinking how wonderful to turn that into a book as well.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Oh, okay.
It's published.
Yes.
It's part of like the coffee table book.
Absolutely.
You know? And so, use that to create a text that could be used in different ways.
Yeah,
and
along
then the
with the
audio
photos
could be used in different ways. So
absolutely. Well, and we have clients who, come in and want to write, want to do a biography or want to write their memoir for their own personal, for their family. They're not trying to become bestsellers or anything.
Right.
But boy, that takes a lot of time. Not that the video doesn't, but I think it's more natural for people, I imagine, to share their stories when you're asking questions rather than trying to write them eloquently.
Well, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
We're rambling, but
yeah.
There are people who are really good writers. And writers, they do tours where they read from their books.
Yeah, that's
and they're
true.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And sometimes they do their own audiobooks because they know how to tell a story and it's their story.
Yeah.
So there may be some people that might want video where it's kind of like, help me out. I don't know what to talk about. There may be other people where it's like, no, he wants to read this story because he's already composed it and it is perfect.
Yeah.
And we just need to capture the storytelling part of it.
Yeah. I love that. I love that because there is something powerful about the voice. I know, again, aging myself a little bit, but my parents had 8mm film reels, right? So if you can remember the 8mm film reels, and they had all these cartridges. I think there were 47 little cartridges, and those small ones only contain, I think, a max of 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And so there was a little minute here and 30 seconds there.
Precious.
And it was so cool to see my siblings and I running around as children, but they didn't have any sound.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I always wonder, when my kids were born, you hear their voices, I always think, well, what did I sound like?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there is something to be said about being able to capture the story, even if you're reading it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. How can the Network One-on-One audience reach out to you?
Yeah, no, go ahead, Chris.
Well, Chris Ryan video at gmail.com. Very simple.
Yeah.
There's a website out there, www.chrisryanvideo.com. So it's super easy to find me. And I'm also a member of several chambers here, Vista and Carlsbad in Southern California. So if you just remember the business name, it's easy to find me.
Yeah.
Chris Ryan Video.
That's fantastic. And for me, the company name is 2000 Paces. So it's the number 2000 and then PACES. So 2000paces.com is our website. People obviously ask, well, where did that come from? 2000 Paces in ancient times or biblical times represented a day's journey. And we're trying to capture our client's journey. So, it's all about kind of preserving that journey. So that's where that comes from, 2000 Paces. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to meet you.
It was fantastic to meet you, Chris. I'm really excited to work with you.
Yeah. This has been great.
Yeah. I love, like I said, I am so passionate about what we provide, and it's something that's so meaningful to me.
Yeah.
And to hear somebody else that's doing something so similar in my mind, but so different, right?
Coming at it a little bit differently.
Absolutely. And listen, I'm not, once in a while we get calls and people ask, oh, do you do photography, or do you do any videography? And no, I'm not even going to claim to try and do that. So to know that we have a resource, so that's incredible. So,
good.
it's been a pleasure.
Well, I look forward to the future.
Yeah.